Tonight we slip into the fur-lined boots of someone you've probably never imagined being, a Viking-age grandma. Not the horned helmet warrior, those weren't even real, sorry, but the woman who runs the household with one hand while holding a screaming toddler with the other. Picture it, a smoky longhouse, frost painting patterns on the thatch outside, and a snoring goat way too close to your head. You've got joints that ache, but there's stew to be stirred, gossip to be monitored, and at least one neighbor's curse to casually sidestep. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the time where you are down in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun. Not because you're disciplined, but because the smoke from the central hearth never really clears out overnight, and your back only lets you sleep in one lumpy position for about 10 minutes. So up you get, your old wool cloak wrapped around your shoulders, your feet crunching across rushes and bits of hay scattered over the dirt floor. You pass 3 sleeping grandchildren, one of whom has somehow managed to nestle his head into the family's onion stash. The longhouse is still dark, lit only by the coals still glowing faintly under the ash pile in the hearth. You mutter under your breath, nothing unkind, just something about the gods in your knees, and start digging through the ash with a carved stick, gently coaxing the fire back to life. You hear the goat first. Always the goat. His name is either Bork or Snorri, depending on which grandkid you ask, and he's tied near the door because he tried to eat the weaving last week. He bleats like someone insulted his mother, and you toss him a heel of old bread before he can start chewing on the doorframe again. Historians still argue whether older women in Norse society had specific leadership roles in the home or if it was more of a natural age gets you boss rights kind of deal. But either way, no one questions your right to shuffle around before sunrise, talking to goats and smacking lazy firewood with the flat of your hand. Once the fire catches, you settle a pot over it. Thin porridge again. You think longingly of the last festival, when there was honey and nuts, but today it's oats and salted water, maybe some dried berries if the mice didn't get them first. As the steam rises, you warm your hands over the pot and glance outside. The air is thick with morning mist, curling across the frozen ground like it's trying to sneak into the longhouse. Someone behind you coughs, a grandchild stirring, likely the one with onion breath. You don't turn around. They'll either get up or fall back asleep. Your job is not to coddle, it's to make sure no one dies of cold, starvation, or stupidity. You trudge to the door and push it open. It sticks, always does. Outside, the air hits your face like a slap, clean, sharp, and cold enough to make your eyes water. You breathe it in anyway. This is your land, your morning, your first few moments of peace before the madness begins. You check the sky. Still stars. You check the wind. Smells like snow is on the way. Or maybe just Bork again. Hard to tell. There's a faint path carved through the snow by boots and paws, leading out toward the livestock pen and the privy pit. You do not go to the privy pit. That is for someone younger. You're old enough to deserve the chamber pot and an attitude about it. You return inside just as your daughter stumbles into view, rubbing her eyes and yawning wide enough to catch a bird. You give her a look. She tries not to meet your gaze and instead busies herself with shaking out a blanket. The hierarchy is clear. You are not just a mother. You're the mother of the mother. That's a whole different level of threat. As the porridge thickens, you rattle off the day's needs: more firewood, clean water from the stream, watch the toddler near the well, again. The chores don't change much. There's no Viking to-do app, just routines so old they practically hum in your bones. And humming, you do. A low tune, one your grandmother taught you, which may or may not be about bread rising properly. Nobody knows the original words anymore. You just add nonsense syllables and pretend it's sacred. The kids are more likely to obey if they think it's a spell. One curious fact most people miss. In many Norse households, older women held the keys, literally. They wore them at their waist like symbols of authority, unlocking storage chests and food pantries, and in some sagas, even the family's hidden silver. You don't have silver. You have some pickled fish and a broken spindle. But you do have the key to the grain bin, and in this household, that's power. The sun finally starts to rise, staining the clouds orange and pink. You don't stop to admire it. You've seen hundreds. You do glance up, though, muttering thanks to Freya or maybe just to the sky in general. Hard to tell where worship ends and habit begins. You step over the now fully awake grandchildren and start checking the tools, ladle, fire poker, the weird wooden spoon that always smells like turnips no matter how often it's washed. You wrap your hands around a clay mug filled with the first hot drink of the day, herbal, bitter, and maybe just a drop of mead from the hidden jug, depending on how early it feels. And that's your morning. No yoga. No emails. Just smoke in your eyes, goat hair on your cloak, and the quiet knowledge that everything in this house depends on you remembering which pot is soup and which pot is lard. The fire's finally dancing properly, sending little sparks up through the smoke hole like tiny fireflies that want nothing more than to singe the thatch. You give the pot one last stir, wipe your hands on your apron, which is basically just a square of wool covered in the history of breakfast past, and prepare to rouse the rest of the house. Not with shouting, no, you're not that kind of grandma. You prefer the stealthy guilt method. You just start doing things loudly and pointedly nearby until people feel obligated to help or at least pretend to. The porridge is thick now, lumpy in a way that says nutritious and also don't chew too hard, there might be a pebble. You begin ladling it into bowls. One of the kids is already hovering. He's your favorite today because he actually managed to keep his tunic on overnight, unlike his little sister who is now half naked and enthusiastically smearing soot on her own legs like she's decorating for battle. You sigh, gently but firmly deposit her in your lap, and start spooning porridge into her mouth between stories about frost giants that eat naughty children for breakfast. It works surprisingly well. Outside, the sun is finally up, barely. Just a watery disk behind a sky the color of old linen. No clocks, no alarms. Just light and cold and the movement of animals to mark the hour. Someone drags in a sloshing bucket of water from the stream, and it immediately starts steaming in the warm room. You nod approvingly. Water's clean. For once. You assign chores like a general dispatching troops. You fetch more firewood. You check the traps. And you'd know, not you, the taller one, see if the chickens froze again. Everyone groans, because it's cold and chores are boring, but you arch one grey eyebrow and suddenly they remember that you once chased off a dog with a broom and a threat to skin it for slippers. One mainstream historical fact: Viking homes were often large enough to shelter extended families and livestock together during winter. Which meant constant noise, and yes, goat smells in the bedroom were real. Privacy? No such thing. But survival wasn't about luxury, it was about proximity and heat, and you've gotten good at both. You start preparing the mid-morning food stash. Not a full meal, just the kind of thing you can nibble while scolding children or berating an axe blade for being too dull. Bits of dried meat, some barley bread, a lump of cheese so hard it could be used as a weapon. You wrap it in cloth and tuck it away for later, near the fire, but not too near. Last week, someone melted the butter into the ash pit, and you're still holding a grudge. You notice the baby has gone quiet. Not asleep, quiet. Which is far more dangerous. You crane your neck and spot her under a stool, holding something suspiciously shiny. You swoop in, extract the item, your spindle needle, and then scoop her up in the same motion, planting a kiss on her soot-covered forehead. She squeals and bites your chin. This is love. There's a rhythmic thumping outside, the sound of someone splitting wood. You glance toward the doorway, half expecting to see your son, but no, it's your daughter-in-law. She's strong, competent, and entirely too fond of trying new methods. Like storing onions in your old shoes or boiling milk with pine needles. You respect her work ethic, but not her cooking. Inside, the children are now pretending to be bears. This mostly involves growling, rolling on the floor, and knocking over anything taller than a bowl. You let them be. Play is learning, and also, they're burning energy you won't have to deal with later. But when one of them starts poking the fire with a stick, you do shout, just once, sharp and clear. The stick drops. Balance is restored. Now you settle into your favorite part of the morning, checking the food stores. Not because it's fun, but because it's yours. The pantry chest creaks when you open it. Inside, you count 3 jars of fermented fish, still stinks, 2 bundles of dried herbs, half a sack of oats, and the smoked remains of a reindeer shoulder. You adjust things, sniff a few, and mentally calculate how many days you can stretch this before someone needs to go fishing again. Here comes the quirky tidbit. Some Viking households added birch bark or tree resin to preserve certain foods longer, and also to flavor them. You once chewed birch sap as a girl. It tasted like forest breath and made your teeth stick together. You haven't forgiven birch trees since. A knock on the wall, not the door, the wall. It's your neighbor's granddaughter, announcing herself in the traditional I don't want to interrupt, but also I want breakfast method. You let her in. She's a skinny, clever little thing who always brings news from the next farm over, and sometimes acorns for your pet chicken. You serve her porridge and pretend not to eavesdrop while she gossips with your eldest. Historians still argue whether Norse grandmothers were mostly confined to the home or participated actively in local decision-making. What's clear is that your words carry weight. If someone's child misbehaves, they send them to you. If someone's sheep goes missing, they ask you if you've seen anything. If someone's husband strays, well, you mention things gently until he reconsiders. Your knees ache again. You sit on a low stool and stretch your legs toward the fire. The warmth climbs slowly through your bones. One of the children comes over, sees your feet, and yelps, "Your toes look like roots." You nod solemnly. "That's because I'm part tree." He gasps. You wink. Parenting, grandparenting, it's all about confidence. Later, someone complains that their porridge is too bland. You hand them a turnip and say, "Then make it better." They don't. The rest of the house begins to hum with the sound of activity. Voices overlap, feet scuffle, a dog barks from outside. You feel it. The day is no longer yours alone. It belongs now to the house, the people, the chores. But you had your moment. The quiet fire. The steam on your hands. The goat that didn't bite you, for once. You sigh, pat your knees, and rise. Time to spin some wool and complain about the weather. You sit cross-legged on a low bench near the fire, your old wool cloak draped around your shoulders like a ceremonial robe, though it's mostly just to keep goat fur off your tunic. Your hands reach for the distaff and spindle, already warmed by habit. The wool is soft today, freshly carded, with only a few stubborn burrs that you flick out with practiced fingers. Spinning isn't glamorous. It's repetitive, slow, and when done right, utterly hypnotic. The kids are still playing bear. You don't mind. As long as they don't light anything on fire or eat dirt, you're willing to let them maul each other in the name of imagination. You twist the fibers between your fingers, feed them to the spindle, and let the rhythm take you. Pull, twist, spin. Pull, twist, spin. This is muscle memory, older than the longhouse, older than stories. You could do this in your sleep. You probably have done it in your sleep. And you're not alone. Around you, other women are settling into their own workstations, carding wool, weaving on vertical looms, untangling yarn that a particularly vengeful cat has attacked. Conversation hums like bees around a hive. Gossip, of course. Always gossip. But also news, worries, dreams, debates over whose stew tasted like sadness last week. The loom creaks in the corner, already in use. It's massive, taller than a child, and heavy enough that it never moves once placed. You helped build it yourself, years ago, when your hands didn't ache quite so much. Now it's your daughter who works the loom while you spin and listen. Here's the thing no one tells you. The weaving area is the nerve center of the home. You hear everything. Who's getting married? Who fell in the mud? Who's pregnant, even if she doesn't know it yet? The loom doesn't just produce cloth, it weaves secrets into every thread. One mainstream historical fact: Viking women were primarily responsible for textile production. Their work wasn't just domestic, it was economic. Goodwill could be traded, given as dowry, or used as tribute. It mattered. Your thread isn't just thread, it's currency, it's reputation, it's survival. Did you hear? Someone murmurs, not even trying to hide the intrigue. You raise an eyebrow without looking up. That's the universal signal for go on. Ingun's boy saw a ship out near the cove. Big one. Not local. You nod. Foreign ships always bring a buzz of possibility and dread. Traders. Raiders. A wandering chieftain. Or just some lost Danes looking for a decent mead hall. You make a quiet sound, equal parts interest and indifference, and keep spinning. Nothing you can do about ships unless they need socks. Still, you file it away. Your bones feel a bit twitchy, and that usually means something's coming. A girl sneezes and then swears. You glance over. She's stabbed her finger on a spindle. There's a single drop of blood, dramatic and overly tragic, which she displays like she's just been shot with an arrow. You hand her a strip of cloth and a dried clove. Suck on this, you say. You'll live. Probably. Quirky tidbit. Vikings chewed cloves and other aromatic herbs to freshen their breath, or at least, to make it less terrible. You're not sure it works, but the girl's not complaining now that her mouth is full of bitter spice and her hands are too occupied for dramatics. The rhythm picks back up. Spin, twist, pull. The yarn grows longer. You drape it carefully in a basket, coil by coil. Some of it will be dyed later, using lichen or madder root or crushed bugs, yes, bugs. The red ones make the best color. You once told a child that the dye was made from dragon blood and she still refuses to wear red to this day. One of the other women mutters something about her mother-in-law. You look up, deadpan. Present. The room explodes in laughter. You let it ride for a moment, then grin and go back to your spindle. Light sarcasm is your shield, and they know better than to push their luck. Historians still argue whether elderly women in Norse society were seen as burdens or wisdom keepers. You're firmly in the wisdom keeper camp. You've survived winters, births, frostbite, and one very unfortunate mushroom stew incident. That counts for something. Probably. There's a lull. The fire crackles. Someone shifts on the bench. You can hear the faint sound of someone sharpening a knife outside, scrape, scrape, scrape. Inside, the loom groans as your daughter tightens the warp threads. The house is alive with motion, but no one's hurrying. Not yet. The tension of morning is fading into the gentle slog of midday. The kids have moved on from bears to trolls. They clomp around with hunched backs and deep voices, demanding tolls from anyone who tries to cross the imaginary bridge, which is apparently the family dog, who is being extremely patient. You allow it. They're learning negotiation skills and basic extortion. Useful life tools. You finally take a break. Your shoulders are sore. You flex your fingers, which crack like breaking ice. You reach for a bit of cheese, sniff it, and decide it's still edible. Barely. You eat around the green parts. A young woman sits beside you, her hair braided tight, face set in that I need advice but won't ask for it expression. You wait. She doesn't speak. You hand her your spindle and raise an eyebrow. She starts spinning, badly, and finally mumbles, "He hasn't spoken to me since the harvest feast." Ah. Boy trouble. Or man trouble. Possibly both, these things blur in Viking times. You listen, offering the occasional grunt. You don't offer advice yet. That comes after 3 mistakes and 1 embarrassing admission. You've got a system. Eventually, you say, maybe he's ashamed. Maybe he's stupid. Or maybe he's ashamed and stupid. She laughs, despite herself. You hand her another clove. Time passes slowly in the weave room. You don't measure it in hours, you measure it in yarn, in stories exchanged, in how many times the toddler nearly eats something poisonous before you intervene. The warp threads hum like bees when the shuttle moves fast, and it's almost music. Not a melody, exactly, but something older. Something deep. And when the spindle finally slips from your hand, not dropped, just gently finished, you sigh and stretch and declare that your fingers are officially retired for the next 30 minutes. The others scoff, but they know you mean it. For now. You finally step outside. The wool still clings to your skirt, a few stubborn threads hanging on like barnacles, but you ignore them. The air is bright now, though bright is relative, it's that northern kind of daylight that looks like someone turned the sun down to half power. Everything's grey, gold, and windblown. You stretch your arms. Your joints snap like tree branches in frost. The sky smells like snow. You can feel it in your fingers, in your gums, in that one weird spot on your left heel that always tingles before a storm. You mutter something about it to the dog. He agrees by sneezing. Weather watching is part superstition, part experience, and part staring really hard at the sky like it owes you money. You scan the horizon. There's a strange silence in the wind, a softness that doesn't match the season. Feels wrong, you say to no one in particular, which is the most efficient way to get people to panic quietly. One of the boys runs past, shirt half-tied, claiming he just saw a raven with 2 heads. It was just a regular raven, you call after him. With attitude. But still, you make a note of it. In the sagas, ravens are never just birds. They're signs, messengers. Or maybe just annoying. Like neighbors, but with wings. Historians still argue whether Viking women participated in official weather readings or informal forecasting. But there's no debate about this. You know the wind. You can tell when a sea storm's coming by the way the smoke shifts in the chimney. You know a hard frost by how the goats start pacing. You know a wet spring by the thickness of birch bark. The goats are twitchy. You walk past the pen, clicking your tongue. Bork snory side eyes you like he suspects you of stealing his hay. You stare back. It's unclear who wins. You make your way to the garden patch, though garden is generous. This time of year it's mostly dirt, leftover roots, and one heroic cabbage trying to die in peace. You crouch, sniff the soil, poke at some lichen on a rock, and nod sagely. Then you pluck the lichen and pocket it. Good for coughs or hexes. Either or. A younger woman approaches with a basket and a nervous face. You think the snow'll hit tonight, she asks. You grunt. Snow doesn't ask permission. It just comes. That sounds wise, so you leave it hanging. You feel something in your gut, like a rope pulled taut. It could be the weather. Could be that weird cheese from earlier. Could be something worse. You trudge back toward the house. Not fast. Your knees won't allow it. But with purpose. Inside, the fire is strong, the children quieter. Someone's cleaning the hearthstones. Someone else is scraping hide for leather. You nod in approval, then shuffle to your herbs. They're hanging in bundles by the wall, dried mint, thyme, mugwort, juniper berries, and something you only label as do not touch unless you're sure. You select a handful of dry sage and a twist of willow bark and begin grinding them in your bowl with the end of a carved antler. One mainstream historical fact: Viking women served as the family's healers. They understood plants, poultices, and the delicate art of getting someone to drink something disgusting without too much complaint. You've brewed teas for coughs, paste for burns, and one time you made a stew so spicy it cleared out an entire hut's worth of nasal passages in 20 minutes. Someone sneezes. You glance up. It's the neighbor girl again. You toss her a cloth and a handful of dried nettle. Boil this. Drink it. Don't cry. She blinks. Is it supposed to sting? No, you say. That just means it's working. You set a pot on the fire and add a pinch of this and a scrap of that, mostly herbs, but also a tiny bit of something wrapped in cloth from the back of your box. No one asks what it is. They know better. You stir with a slow, deliberate motion, the steam curling up around your face like a friendly ghost. Here's the quirky tidbit. You once heard that some women in the far north read the weather by throwing bones into the fire and watching how they crack. You tried it once. All it told you was clean your fire pit. Still, you respect the creativity. Outside, the wind has picked up. The shutters rattle. A loose flap of hide at the door flaps like a bird with bad rhythm. You mutter another weather curse, nothing dramatic, just enough to make it clear that if the gods are planning a snowstorm, they'd better have a very good reason. Someone knocks. A real knock this time, not the wall tap. You answer. It's the old man from 2 farms over, the one who always smells like fish oil and knows exactly 6 words at any volume. Cold's coming. You feel it. You nod. Yeah. He nods back. That's the conversation. He leaves. You go back inside and finally sit. Your knees hum like bees in a jar. You reach for the cup someone left by the fire. It's lukewarm now, some kind of herbal broth with a chunk of root floating in it. You sip. It tastes like boiled bark and bad decisions, but it'll keep you warm. The grandkids have built a fort out of logs and furs. You admire their technique, structurally unsound, but bold. The smallest one offers you a seat inside. You accept. For 5 minutes, you sit cross-legged under a fur roof while 3 tiny humans tell you that your name is now Queen Icefang. You nod. It feels appropriate. Then someone farts, and the moment is over. You emerge, brush yourself off, and return to the window. The sky is darker. Heavy. The air has that stillness again. You rub your palms together. Not from cold, from nerves. Something's shifting out there. Could be weather. Could be more. You poke your head out the door again. Bork bleats and glares. You glare back. The wind whistles low and mean through the trees. Storm's coming, you mutter. Or something that thinks it's a storm. Either way, you make a list in your head. Bring in more firewood, double-check the larder, tie down the roof skins. And make that batch of pine resin salve for sore feet. Someone's going to need it. Someone always does. You shuffle back toward the herb shelf, one hand on your lower back, the other gripping the wooden pole in the middle of the longhouse that everyone pretends not to need but absolutely leans on. The wind outside has taken on that eerie howl, not loud, not violent, just listening. It snakes through the smoke hole and swirls around the rafters, carrying with it the scent of pine, frost, and something slightly unsettling, like wet moss after a funeral. The hearth crackles. You sit beside it again and begin sorting dried leaves into small bundles. Sage for clearing the air. Nettle for aching joints. Valerian for bad sleep. And a personal favorite, Angelica root, which supposedly wards off evil spirits and in-laws alike. You tie each bundle with string spun from leftover wool and lay them neatly in a row like tiny leafy soldiers awaiting orders. You're not just preparing for colds and coughs today. Something deeper tugs at your instincts. That strange shift in the air, that twitch in your thumbs, it all whispers that someone is going to need your help very soon. Or your herbs. Or your very specific glare that scares people into healing out of sheer intimidation. Across the fire, your youngest grandson sneezes hard enough to fall over backward. You lean toward him, eyeing his nose like it just betrayed the family. "You're not allowed to get sick," you say. "I already boiled the last of the spruce tips." He nods solemnly, clearly understanding that love and threats often share the same sentence around here. Time to get serious. You reach into the very back of your chest, beneath the extra socks, behind the beeswax, and pull out the runes. They're simple, carved from antler and burnished smooth by decades of use. You haven't touched them in weeks, months, maybe. Not since that business with the lightning strike and the exploding oat barrel. You hold the pouch for a moment, then open it and spill the runes gently into your palm. Here comes the mainstream historical fact. Viking women, particularly elder ones, were sometimes considered vola, seers, wise women, keepers of secret knowledge and fate. These women didn't wear helmets or swing swords. They whispered to the gods, read the threads of destiny, and brewed tea that could scare a troll. Some were feared, others revered, most were both. You don't claim to be a real vulva. But when people knock on your door looking worried and holding a chicken, they're not coming for parenting tips. You choose 3 runes, randomly but not blindly. That's how it's supposed to work. The first falls face up, Hagalaz, the hailstone. Disruption, chaos, an unavoidable force from outside. Your brow furrows. The second, Perthro, mystery, hidden things, secrets revealed only when they're ready. You grunt. That one always makes you nervous. The third, Iwaz, endurance, protection, sacrifice. Well, that's a cocktail. Someone's getting into trouble, you mutter, brushing the runes back into their pouch. And I'll be the one who has to get them out. You set the pouch aside and reach for your mixing bowl. Time for brews. Not your usual cough syrups or foot soak blends, no, this one's for strength. A power tonic. It includes dried rowan bark, crushed juniper, honey, just a drop liquid gold this time of year, and something from a jar labeled "Only Don't Ask." Quirky tidbit. Some Viking folk remedies included things like burying eggs under the full moon or whispering to stinging nettles to calm down. One woman you knew swore by bathing in fermented milk. You tried it once. Smelled like regret for a week. You steep the mixture in a little clay pot, stirring slowly while the steam rises into your hair and the corners of your thoughts. The smell is sharp and strange, earthy and sweet. You won't drink it yourself, not unless you want to run screaming through the snow and fight a tree, but it might be just what someone else needs. Behind you, someone clears their throat. You turn slowly. It's your daughter-in-law, holding her hand awkwardly. A long splinter runs up the side of her palm, red and angry. "Wood pile got me," she mutters. You take her hand without a word, examine it, and nod. Then you reach for your knife. She blinks. "Do we need the knife?" "No," you say, but it makes you sit still. She does. You ease the splinter out with a hooked needle and a sigh. Then you dab the wound with a salve made from resin and crushed mint, wrap it with cloth, and give her a gentle shove. "Stop trying to do everything. That's my job." She almost smiles. Then she says, "The clouds look heavy." You nod. Historians still argue whether runes were used casually in Viking daily life or kept strictly ceremonial. You'd argue that if something helps someone sleep, heal, or worry a little less, it doesn't matter what it used to be. You do what works. Later, a neighbor boy shows up, holding a bundle of feathers and looking like he's about to cry. "Something wrong with the hen," he mumbles. You go with him. The hen is fine. Just broody. But you take the moment to look around his family's longhouse, sniff the air, check the mood. You ask 3 questions. You hear more than 3 answers. You tuck away the information for later. When you get back home, the sun is already leaning westward. You drop into your seat by the fire again and let your hands rest in your lap. They tremble just a little. From effort. From age. From whatever's coming. The wind outside shifts. A cold snap against the door. You whisper an old chant under your breath. Not because it's magic, necessarily, but because it feels like the right time to remind the universe that you're still watching. Still ready. Still here. You tie your cloak around your shoulders again. The fire's warm, but your bones want motion, and something in the air still won't let you sit still. You glance at the little clay pot near the hearth, the one with the tonic you brewed earlier. It's cooled now, thick as syrup. You ladle some into a leather pouch, tie it off with sinew, and tuck it into your cloak pocket. Just in case. Your fingers trail along the woven cords by the doorway. Offerings hang from them, feathers, carved bits of bone, a dried mushroom that no one remembers hanging there, but no one dares take down. A charm, maybe. Or a joke left by the gods. Same difference. You step out into the cold. The wind's stronger now, slicing through the trees like a quiet threat. It whistles low and wild, the kind of wind that wakes up the forest and everything in it. You start the walk to the grove. It's not far, just past the goat pen and the blackberry thicket that's been dead since last harvest. But in this light, and with the sky bruising over into steel grey, it feels like crossing into another world. Your boots crunch through frost. The forest breathes slowly around you. This isn't a place you go every day. You save it for when the air tastes wrong, or when someone dreams about wolves walking on 2 legs, or when the fire sputters for no reason. Today qualifies. The sacred grove is just a cluster of old trees on a small rise, wrapped in silence and shadow. A natural temple. There's no altar, no stone circle, no signs. Just moss, roots, and a feeling that something's listening. Always has been. Mainstream historical fact, sacred groves were real. Old Norse sagas mention them, places considered holy, where oaths were sworn and offerings made. People left gifts there, food, iron tools, carved figurines. Sometimes animals. Sometimes more. But always with respect. You pause at the edge of the grove. The trees lean in like eavesdropping grandmothers. You bow your head, just slightly, and step inside. It's quieter here. No birds, no rustling, just the soft hush of winter moss and your own heartbeat. You kneel slowly, ignoring the protests from your knees, and reach into your pouch. From it, you pull. A sliver of salt-cured fish, a rare treat. A twist of wool yarn. A dried sprig of yarrow. And one of your own hairs, plucked just moments ago. You place them gently on a stone covered in lichen. For peace, you whisper. For protection. And for patience, which I'm running out of. Then, just for good measure, you mutter something in the old tongue. It's half prayer, half warning. That's when the tree rustles. Not the wind. A single tree. Its trunk groans faintly, like it's shifting in its sleep. A branch creaks. You narrow your eyes. I'm too old for riddles, you tell it. If you have something to say it. The tree, being a tree, says nothing. But the wind picks up just enough to carry the scent of wood smoke and something else, salt, maybe? Sea spray? You frown. That usually means change. Or guests. Possibly both. You sit for a moment longer, hands resting on your knees. Your breath fogs the air in front of you. You feel the way your body blends into the earth, solid, aching, alive. And you think of your own grandmother, who used to come here before you. You picture her leaning against this same stone, making the same offerings, scolding the same tree. Hope you're not laughing at me, you mutter. Unless you're also helping. Quirky tidbit. In some fringe traditions, women whispered their secrets into tree knots, believing the spirits within would carry their wishes upward, into the sky. You tried it once when you were 10. You asked to never marry the boy who smelled like onions. It worked. He married someone else. She still complains. You rise slowly, brushing moss from your cloak. The wind has shifted again, cooler now, tugging you back toward home. You bow one last time to the grove and start walking. Halfway down the path, a squirrel startles you by dropping a nut directly onto your head. You yelp, spin, and see the tiny beast glaring from a branch with zero remorse. "I'm watching you," you hiss. It chitters like it doesn't care. Probably doesn't. Historians still argue whether groves were used strictly for religious rites or also for personal rituals, like healing or grieving. You think it's both. Same thing, really. Who decides what counts as sacred? Back at the longhouse, the children are all inside. Someone remembered to latch the door. You shake the frost from your boots and step inside, the warmth like a wet blanket of smoke and stew. You're instantly mobbed by the smallest ones, all wanting to know where you went and what you saw and why there's moss on your butt. You tell them the truth. "I went to talk to the trees." They nod, serious. One asks, "Did they talk back?" You say, "They tried." But they're terrible conversationalists. You hand your daughter-in-law the pouch of tonic. "Not for you. For later. Keep it warm. Someone's going to need it." She nods. Doesn't ask questions. Smart girl. You settle by the fire, again, because where else would you go? And the dog curls up at your feet with a heavy sigh. You scratch behind his ears and whisper, "Storm's close." You can feel it now, not just in your bones, but in the fire. It hisses, unsettled, like it knows something's coming too. A guest. A message. A reckoning. Or maybe just a weather front with a bad attitude. Either way, you're ready. Sort of. The next morning arrives like a slap from a cold fish, abrupt, wet, and full of consequences. The roof creaks. The sky has dropped its pretense of politeness and is now dumping snow with all the grace of an angry sheep. You blink at the whiteness beyond the door and sigh long enough to fog up the lintel. Inside the longhouse, things are tense. It's not just the weather. People are moving differently, shoulders higher, voices lower. Someone spilled a bowl of barley, and instead of yelling, they just quietly cleaned it up like they're afraid of jinxing the floor. You know that feeling. That's premonition. And possibly low blood sugar. You eat a slice of bread so dense it might qualify as a defensive weapon and then gather the house. No big speech. Just tasks. Winter rules. Everyone knows them. Don't waste food, don't go outside alone, and for the love of Odin, if the goat escapes again, let him freeze. The morning passes in a weird hush. The storm howls around the walls, whining at the eaves like a rejected suitor. You grind more herbs, not because anyone's sick, but because it feels like the right kind of noise to make soft, purposeful, domestic. Mainstream historical fact: Norse longhouses weren't just homes. They were the heart of everything: birthplace, grave, workplace, temple, dining hall, and refuge all at once. In winter, you might not leave for weeks. Everything happened here. Everything had to. Today, everything's happening to the longhouse. The door opens suddenly. Your son-in-law, tall, capable, and completely soaked, stomps in. He doesn't say anything, just hands you a bundle wrapped in fur. It wriggles. You unwrap it slowly, revealing a boy of about 10, pale and shaking, eyes wide as saucers and twice as wet. He doesn't speak. Doesn't even blink. Just shivers and clutches a small carved boat. The child isn't yours, but his someone's. Found him at the edge of the woods, your son-in-law says. No tracks. No sound. Just there. You don't respond right away. You're already bundling the boy in furs, checking his fingers, touching his forehead. He's cold, yes, but not frostbitten. He's scared, but not hurt. And he smells faintly of salt and ash. That's not forest smell. That's sea. You make him a broth, herbs, dried root, a little butter scraped from the bottom of the pot. You sit him near the fire and tell him stories in a low voice, ones that don't demand answers. Just rhythm. You watch the way he listens without looking. Later, when everyone else is pretending not to stare, you examine the boat he clutches. It's a toy, but a well-made one. Carved from driftwood, with runes etched into the hull. Not decorative. Protective. You whisper one under your breath. The boy flinches. Quirky tidbit. Some believed carving protection runes into toys would keep children safe while they played, especially near water, which was as feared as it was loved. Vikings weren't just sailors, they were also terrified of what might live beneath the waves. You give the boy a piece of honey bread, not because he needs food, but because he needs sweetness. He eats it slowly, like he's afraid it will vanish. That night, you don't sleep much. The longhouse is warm. Everyone's safe. But the fire hisses and pops too loud, and every time the wind screams, you sit up, heart tight. The boy is asleep by the hearth, still wrapped in layers. Someone's placed their favorite blanket over him. Someone else tucked a carved bear into his hands. He's loved already, this child of nowhere. You kneel beside him and whisper, "Are you human?" He doesn't stir. "Are you mine now?" Still nothing. "Did you bring something with you?" His eyes flutter, just a little. Not open. Just aware. Historians still argue whether Viking people believed in changelings, children swapped by spirits or sea creatures. But ask any grandmother, and they'll tell you, some children arrive with more than a past. They arrive with a purpose. Or a debt. You keep watch for the rest of the night. At dawn, you wake the house and send the men to look for his family. No one's missing anyone. No other farms lost a child. No village sent word. It's like he fell from the sky. Or the sea. You call in the elders, not formally, just as let's share a morning stew, and then happen to mention a mysterious boy who may or may not be human. No one laughs. They stir their bowls slowly. One woman crosses herself. Another mutters something about the sea gods collecting interest. You glance at the child, still silent, now sitting upright, carving something into a bit of wood with a sharp little sliver of bone he found somewhere. You didn't give it to him. No one remembers doing so. He looks up and meets your eyes. And smiles. Not a wide, happy smile. A knowing one. You stand up, knees creaking, and say what no one else wants to. We keep him. But we prepare. No one argues. Not out loud. The next few days feel like the air itself is holding its breath. The snow keeps falling, steady and silent, piling against the sides of the longhouse until the doorway becomes a tunnel of white. Inside, the fire crackles louder than usual. No one says much. Not because there's nothing to say, but because no one wants to say the wrong thing in front of him. The boy doesn't speak. Not one word. But he listens. Oh, he listens. When someone stubs a toe and swears, he smirks. When you mutter to yourself while grinding herbs, he glances over like he understood every word. And when one of the girls hums an old lullaby, he hums the second part, perfectly in tune, perfectly in time, without ever looking up from his carving. You watch him, closely. Like a hawk watches a mouse. But you don't show it. You keep spinning wool, brewing tea, tending the fire. Just with one eye open a little wider than usual. One mainstream historical fact: Viking households often adopted or fostered children from other families, especially if they were orphaned or lost. Sometimes it was out of kindness. Sometimes it was political. Sometimes it was because the gods whispered, "Take that one. You've taken him. Now he's yours." In the way that snow belongs to winter, or how a shadow belongs to its flame. Today, he helps you grind bark into powder. He's careful, precise. Doesn't sneeze once, even when the dust rises. You hand him a slice of dried apple. He nods and eats it with slow reverence, like it might disappear if he chews too fast. You decide to test him. You pull out a small bundle of dried juniper and toss it on the fire. It flares, filling the longhouse with its rich, sharp scent. The kid's groan, it stings the nose, but the boy, he stiffens. Just a little. He knows the smell. Juniper isn't just for flavor. It's for cleansing. For truth. For forcing things to show their shape. He doesn't change. Doesn't morph into a sea serpent or a troll with too many teeth. But you notice his breathing slows. His carving hand pauses. His measuring something. Weighing it. You wonder what he sees when he looks at you. Later, you step outside to check the traps. The snow is deep now, well past your knees, and it crunches like old bones. You find a rabbit, bless it, finally, and bring it in, your arms trembling only a little. You clean it while the children pretend not to watch. The boy watches. You show him how to slice the belly, how to peel the skin with one tug, clean as a glove. His eyes don't flinch. But they don't shine, either. Just calm. Too calm. You skin the rabbit, tie the meat up to dry, and say, "Tomorrow, we make stew." He nods. No smile. No thanks. Just knowing. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking legends speak of fylgja, spirits that take the form of animals or people, shadowing a soul through life. They're not always visible. But they can show up when something big is coming. Change. Death. Destiny. You stare at the boy one night while he sleeps, and wonder, is he someone's fylgja? Or is someone else his? That evening, your daughter-in-law finally says what you've been waiting to hear. He should be baptized. You don't look up from your sewing. We don't even know if he's Christian. She hesitates. Well, we know he's not anything else. You raise an eyebrow so slowly it might qualify as a religious ceremony. He might be everything else. She goes quiet after that. Smart. Historians still argue whether pre-Christian Norse homes welcomed strange children with open arms or with suspicion and ritual. The truth? Probably both. Especially if the child showed up during a storm, holding a boat covered in runes, and didn't blink for 2 hours. You dream that night. You're standing in the sacred grove, knee-deep in snow. The trees are whispering, and the wind is chanting your name in a dozen voices. You see the boy, standing at the edge, half in shadow, half made of salt. He opens his mouth. You wake before he speaks. The next morning, you ask him directly. Quiet, casual, like you're commenting on soup. "Where did you come from?" He shrugs. You press. "Do you remember?" He shrugs again. Then says, "I was floating." Everyone freezes. You don't push further. You don't need to. Floating means sea. Floating means not walking. Floating means not entirely alive, or maybe not entirely meant to be here. You tell the others. No questions for a week. Just watching. Just learning. Just letting the boy show himself, however he chooses. You spend the day making another batch of protection charms. You braid wool with small bones, tie feathers and seeds into little bundles. You place one above every sleeping place in the longhouse except the boy's. His gets a carved fish bone wrapped in ash bark. He watches you hang it. Says nothing. You say, "You don't mind?" He shakes his head. You ask, "Do you know what it's for?" He tilts his head. Protection. You nod. From what? He looks at you, unblinking. From me. The air leaves your lungs like someone just kicked you square in the memories. You laugh. But not because it's funny. Because it's true. The storm finally breaks. Not quietly, like snow sometimes does, slipping away in the night, leaving only drips and soft light. No, this one crashes apart like a rotten log underfoot, snapping trees and blasting holes through drifts. The wind throws one final tantrum and slinks away. Morning comes crisp, pale, and suspiciously quiet. You're the first out the door, boots crunching into the fresh crust of ice. Everything is buried, paths, fences, half the goat pen. Bork Snorri is standing on top of the snowbank like a triumphant warlord who's just conquered his own shelter. You squint at him. Don't get ideas, you mutter. He chews slowly, like a goat philosopher, and lets you pass. Inside, the air is lighter, too. Everyone seems to exhale at once, even if no one says it out loud. You organize a team to shovel, send the children to check for leaks, and assign your daughter-in-law to inventory the remaining dried fish, which is down to optimistically labeled as edible. The boy helps without asking. He carries firewood, fetches water, even shoos the hens off the roof with a kind of silent authority. They listen to him. Hens. Listening. You make another note of that. He still doesn't talk much. But he's watching, always watching, like he's learning the rules of a world he didn't grow up in. You start testing him, gently. You hand him a bone needle and ask him to mend a torn mitten. He does it faster than you expected. The stitches aren't pretty, but they hold. You give him a dull knife and a block of wood. He carves a wolf. Not detailed, but true. The proportions are right. The stance is ready to run. You almost hear it breathe. One mainstream historical fact: Viking boys and girls were trained early to contribute, whether through craft, tending animals, or learning the myths and stories that shaped their world. Childhood was short. Usefulness was a form of safety. You teach the boy a game, knucklebones, the old way. He picks it up instantly. Too instantly. He beats you twice. You accuse him of cheating. He doesn't deny it. Just smiles, tiny and smug. That night, you sit near the fire and sharpen your herb knife. He sits across from you, carving something you can't see yet. You say, "Do you remember anything else?" He stops, tilts his head. Then, there was singing. Who sang? He shrugs. I don't think they had mouths. You stop sharpening. He goes back to carving. Quirky tidbit: some Viking tales speak of sea spirits whose songs drive people mad or guide them home, depending on whether you listen or run. Some say the sea sings only to those who've drowned once and been sent back. You consider the rune-covered toy boat again, tucked safely in your box. You've rubbed your thumb across its hull 100 times. The wood doesn't rot. The runes don't fade. And sometimes, when the wind shifts, it smells like kelp. The boy shows you what he's been carving. It's a tree. The sacred grove, unmistakable. But it's not just the trees. He's carved you standing in it, back straight, head tilted, hands raised, not in offering. In warning. Why me? You ask him. He just looks at you like the answer is obvious. You try again. Why here? This time, he does speak. They said you would understand. You want to ask who, but something in your gut tells you that if he names them, they'll come. So you nod. Just a little. That night, you lay out the protection charms again. You place 4 by the door. 1 above the hearth. 1 in the food store. You hesitate, then place 1 over your own bed, for the first time in years. Historians still argue whether charms and wards were symbolic gestures or truly believed to hold power. But in this house, you believe. Because belief has teeth. It holds the darkness back just enough to sleep. And sleep, finally, comes. But not peace. You dream of salt, of waves clawing the shore, not with foam but with fingers. You see ships, not Viking ships, but older, heavier, sails torn like skin. You hear a name you don't remember and wake up gasping. The boy is already awake, sitting by the fire, watching the door. Did you hear it? You ask. He nods. What was it? He says, something that lost me. You don't sleep again that night. You sharpen every blade in the house. You braid your hair. You brew a pot of spruce needle tea and keep it hot. And before dawn, you walk to the grove. Alone. Snow crunches under your boots like brittle bones. The forest is silent, as if waiting. The trees lean in, solemn as witnesses. You kneel and whisper into the roots. If something is coming, you say, I'm ready. The wind answers with a single, wordless sigh. On your way back, you see it. Tracks. Not human. Not animal. Just wrong. And they lead straight to your door. You don't panic. Panicking is for younger women with faster knees and fewer things to protect. You take one long breath, then another. The kind of breath you take before plunging into a freezing river, or confronting your sister-in-law when she's accidentally moved your good cooking pot. Again. You kneel to examine the tracks. They're shallow. No weight behind them. But the shape is off. Not hoof, not paw. More like fingers, long, splayed, as if something walked using hands instead of feet. Or feet pretending to be hands. You've seen otters, seals, even bear cubs. This is none of those. You mutter, nope. Then you follow them. They circle the longhouse. Once. Twice. You count the steps. 37 around. Same every time. Ritual. Or maybe mocking you. They never touch the door. Never break stride. Just loop, over and over, until they vanish right at the path to the grove. You clench your jaw and march back inside, brushing snow from your shoulders like curses. The boy is still by the fire. Still watching. They're looking for you, you say. He nods. Just once. Not scared. Just accepting. Your daughter-in-law walks in carrying a frozen turnip like it's a battle axe. We're out of wood in the second store. I can go. No, you cut in, sharper than intended. No one leaves today. Not alone. She frowns but doesn't argue. You've reached that age where your voice carries weight. Even when you whisper, you assign tasks with purpose. Chopping. Mending. Boiling bones for broth. Movement keeps fear from settling in the bones. The children pick up on it, playing quieter, stacking firewood as if it's sacred. Even the goat is oddly compliant today, standing still as one of the kids ties a charm to his horn. Mainstream historical fact, in Norse society, protective magic or seer was practiced mostly by women. It wasn't just spells or chants. It was presence. Holding a home together, even when the walls shook. That's what you're doing now. Not with spells, but with intention. And your knife, which stays very sharp and very close. By midday, the wind returns. Not as a storm, but as a warning. A sharp, clean edge in the air, like the sky is breathing through its teeth. The smoke from the fire twists strangely, sideways, downward, as if something heavy is pressing from above. You pull out the boat. The boy doesn't move, but his gaze locks on it instantly. You walk over, sit beside him, and lay it on the floor between you. Can you tell me what this is? He hesitates. Then, it was mine. It kept me safe. From what? From the cold. From the deep. You wait. Let the silence stretch. It pulls like taffy. From them. You swallow. And who are they? He finally looks at you. Eyes darker than storm water. The ones who remember what we forgot. You don't like that answer. But it fits. Quirky tidbit. There's a strange tale from the old days, rarely told, about sea spirits who envy human families. They don't want to destroy them, they want to join. But they never quite get it right. They send a child, always too quiet, too perfect, too observant. The family grows attached. Then, one day, they come to retrieve him. And anyone who says no, disappears. You decide not to tell that story right now. Instead, you sprinkle salt along the threshold. The children watch with wide eyes. You wink at them. For flavor, you joke. No one laughs. That night, you can't sleep. Again. So you sew. Mending tunics, tightening mittens, pretending it's just another winter night. But you keep your ears open. The snow outside has stopped falling, and the silence presses against the walls like a held breath. Then you hear it. Not footsteps. Not howling. Singing. Soft. Distant. Not in any language you know. Not a tune you'd hum. It's wrong, not evil, just older than right or wrong. Your skin prickles. You clutch the charm around your neck. The boy stirs in his sleep, but doesn't wake. Or maybe he's pretending. You rise and move to the door. Slowly. Quietly. You lift the latch. A blast of icy wind nearly bowls you over. And there, standing in the clearing beyond the threshold, are 3 figures. Tall. Thin. Barefoot. Their eyes gleam like sea glass. Their hair ripples in the still air, as if caught in a current. They don't blink. They don't speak. They just wait. Historians still argue whether Viking lore truly believed in seawalkers, beings who traveled from one realm to another through tide, mist, and dream. Some say they were just metaphors. Others say they were warnings. You stare them down. You do not flinch. Behind you, the boy wakes. Quiet steps pad toward the door. They want me, he says, simply. I figured. They don't mean harm. They never do. He steps past you, barefoot, untouched by the cold. The snow doesn't crunch under his feet. They said I had to see. See what? What it feels like to be loved. Your throat closes. And now, I go. You reach for him. Not fast. Not desperate. Just enough. He turns. And hugs you. It's brief. It's real. It's warm. Then he steps out into the snow and joins them. The wind stops. The sky clears. And they are gone. Just gone. You stand there a long time. Then you go inside. And lock the door. You don't talk about it the next morning. No one does. You wake before the others, your breath misting in the cold air of the longhouse. The fire's mostly gone out, just a smoldering bundle of coals, but you don't rush to stoke it. The silence is thick, and something inside you wants to sit with it a little longer. You pour yourself a mug of thin broth, not quite warm enough, and sip it like it's medicine, which, in a way, it is. Then you do what Viking grandmothers have done for centuries when the world starts feeling strange. You clean. Not fussing. Not tidying. Full-on purge the spirits with ash and goat scrub kind of cleaning. You sweep every corner, lift every rug, muttering half-remembered chants under your breath. You rub salt into the thresholds, hang new charms over every door, and toss the old ash out into the snow with a sharp begone, and don't dawdle. The children sleep late, which is unusual. Or maybe the house just feels larger now, quieter, heavier. The kind of quiet that usually means someone's missing. You catch your daughter-in-law staring at the hearth. She doesn't say his name. You don't either. It's easier that way. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings believed in WRD, a concept loosely tied to fate, threads of life spun, woven, and sometimes cut by unseen hands. Not everything could be fought. Some things simply were. A child appearing in a storm, then vanishing like mist. That fits too well. By mid-morning, life pretends to return to normal. You go over supplies with your eldest. There's less honey than you remember. More dried peas. The fishing nets need mending. The cheese cave has developed a smell that may or may not be a personal insult. You take notes. You give orders. And you don't look toward the woods. You notice things, though. The air inside the longhouse smells sweeter. The dog has stopped growling at the door at night. The fire burns brighter, easier. Even Bork Snorri the goat has been oddly well behaved. Suspiciously well behaved. You give him a side eye. He chews like innocence incarnate. That afternoon, your grandson finds something in the snow. Not much, just a small piece of driftwood, carved into the shape of a bird. He brings it to you, cradled like treasure. Look, he says. It was on the path. You take it gently. It's warm. Somehow. You nod and say, it's for you. His eyes go wide. From who? You just smile. Someone who remembers. He tucks it into his tunic like a secret. That night, you stir a pot of fish stew and tell a story. Not his story, never directly, but a story about the sea, and the wind, and a boy who learned what it meant to be home. You don't name the boy, but every ear in the room is listening, including yours. Quirky tidbit, in some fringe folk beliefs, especially those mingling Norse and Sami traditions, when a spirit leaves in peace, it often leaves a gift, something small, carved, hidden in the snow or tucked into a boot. A token of goodwill. Or a reminder, I was here. I mattered. Your reminder sits on your bedside now. Not the boat. Not the carvings. A single feather. You didn't put it there. You go out to the grove again, 2 mornings later. Not to ask questions. Just to be. The snow is melting slightly now, just enough to hear water drip from the branches like ticking clocks. You kneel at the stone and whisper, thank you. Whether it's to the boy, or the ones who let him come, or the tree that creaked all those weeks ago, you're not sure. You whisper it anyway. You're still kneeling when you hear footsteps behind you. Slow. Familiar. You don't turn. Took you long enough. Your daughter-in-law chuckles. You always know. You say, because no one else ever walks like a deer with cold feet. She sits beside you, careful not to disturb the moss. Neither of you speak for a long time. Then she says, I miss him. Even though I didn't really know him. You nod. She adds, is that silly? No, you say softly. That's exactly how love works. Historians still argue whether Viking beliefs allowed for peaceful contact with spirits, or if all unknown things were met with violence. You think that depends on who's watching, and who's willing to listen. You stand, finally. Bones aching, but spirit lighter. And as you walk back to the longhouse, you think, not everything that comes through the storm is a curse. Sometimes, it's a reminder. Sometimes, it's a guest. And sometimes, it's a lesson dressed in little boots, carrying a boat. You leave the charms hanging, but you untie the one over your bed. Not because you feel unsafe, but because tonight, finally, you'll sleep without waiting. Spring doesn't exactly arrive, it creeps in, like a cat trying to act like it wasn't gone all winter. One morning, the snow just doesn't come back. You wake up to sunlight sneaking through the smoke hole and the sound of something dripping insistently off the roof. The air smells different, too. Less like cold and fire, more like wet dirt and the faintest hint of green. You crack the door and sniff. Yes, there it is. The first breath of thaw. Everyone notices. The kids burst out the door like startled geese, yelping as their boots sink into slush. Your daughter-in-law immediately starts scrubbing furs that haven't seen soap since Yule. The dog rolls in something disgusting. The goat, who somehow survived the whole winter without getting eaten or cursed, tries to eat a pine cone. Again. You sit by the fire with a mug of nettle tea and let yourself smile. Spring means work. More than winter. Planting, mending fences, patching roofs, drying herbs, fishing, scrubbing every inch of the longhouse until it no longer smells like 12 humans and 3 ferrets lived in it all season. But it also means light. The kind that pours into your bones and says, you made it. You're still here. Mainstream historical fact, the Norse calendar split the year in 2, summer and winter. Spring was less a season, more a shift. A signal that the worst was over, and the world would now start repaying your patience, with food, with warmth, with the occasional functioning goat. You send a group out to check the beehives. Another to inspect the river. The ice is breaking, slow and stubborn. But it's breaking. That's enough. You begin your spring rituals. Not big, flashy ones. Just small rites of waking. Hanging fresh birch by the door. Sprinkling dried thyme under the beds. Whispering to the land when you plant your first handful of barley. Not asking for miracles. Just partnership. The boy would have liked this part. You don't say his name. still. But you think about him when you find another small carving in the ash pile by the hearth. This one's a fox. Smiling. You almost miss it, almost sweep it away with the rest of the suit. But something stops you. You pocket it instead. Quirky tidbit. In fringe traditions, it's said that spirits who visit in the dead of winter sometimes leave behind tokens that appear only after the frost retreats, objects hidden in fire ash, snowmelt, or beneath roots. Gifts. Or perhaps reminders. You find 3 over the next few days. The fox. A tiny wooden hand holding a fish. And a rune you don't recognize, carved into a pebble so smooth it feels almost wrong in your palm. You don't show them to anyone. Not yet. Some things aren't for the village. Some are just for the keeper. That's what you've become, after all. Not just a grandmother. A keeper. Of stories. Of things. Of people. The planting begins in earnest. You bless the seeds with warm breath and old songs. The children help, dropping them into furrows like treasure. Your eldest makes jokes about the soil being too stubborn. You tell him he should sympathize. Everyone laughs. You laugh too. It feels good. Strange, but good. Historians still argue whether Viking women performed formal rituals for the changing seasons or if those duties belonged to seers and priests alone. But you know the truth. Every woman who kept a hearth warm and a child fed was a priestess of survival. And you've survived. The longhouse smells different now, sap, bread, wool, sunlight. You take down the heavier charms. Replace them with lighter ones. Feathers instead of bones. Sprigs of rosemary and dill. The kind of things that say, stay a while, not, don't you dare. That evening, you sit outside, wrapped in a shawl, watching the light stretch a little farther each hour. You sip something sweet, maybe too sweet. Mead brewed before the snow fell. You'd been saving it for when the world turned back toward green. You whisper, you'd like this. The wind shifts. Not much. Just enough. Your daughter-in-law joins you, rubbing her arms. It's warm, she says. But it still feels like something's watching. You nod. Probably. Doesn't mean it's bad. She's quiet a moment. You think we'll see him again. You pause. Then say, not the way we expect. And you leave it at that. You sleep well that night. Deep. No dreams. Just the kind of sleep that resets something. That digs its heels into your bones and presses you down like soil pressing seeds. The next morning, you find the goat has climbed onto the roof again. You don't even yell. You just look up and say, fine. If you fall, I'm not healing you. He bleats in defiance. And somewhere in the woods, far off, but not too far, a bird sings a song you've never heard before. It has no words. But you understand it anyway. Welcome back, it says. We were waiting. By the time the snow is just a memory and the earth gives under your boots with that delightful squelch, life in the village has erupted into noisy, muddy action. There's shouting, laughter, swearing at fence posts, arguing over seed sizes, and at least one cousin insisting he heard the plough creak like a banshee. You smile and let them work it out. You've got other things on your mind. Specifically, the grove. It's not that you're avoiding it. You've just been giving it space. But now that the ice is gone and the moss has woken up, you feel it calling again. Not loud. Not urgent. Just a gentle tug, like an old friend raising one eyebrow across the mead hall. So, after a morning spent teaching the youngest how to boil bark for dye, and stopping them from turning the goat pink, you pack a small basket herbs, a knife, a bit of honey bread, and walk out alone. The grove greets you like it always has, solemn, damp, peaceful, and full of frogs. Seriously, where did they all come from? You take it as a good sign. Mainstream historical fact. Norse sacred groves, Lundir, were often quiet, liminal spaces, places to commune with the gods, spirits, or simply to listen. They weren't loud. They weren't flashy. But they were respected. Feared, sometimes. But always, known. You kneel at the base of the tree you favor. The one with roots like fingers and bark like old skin. You pour a little honey bread onto the moss, an offering. You murmur nothing special, just thanks. Thanks for the winter, the safety, the return of the light. And then, Because you're you add, and thanks for not letting the goat explode. You swear the tree rustles in amusement. You sit there a long time, hands still, eyes closed, just breathing. You don't expect anything. That's not the point. You're not a seer or a god talker. You're a grandmother. And that's enough. Eventually, you open your eyes and see something small at the base of the tree. It wasn't there before. Another carving. A tiny sheep. With horns. And a little smirk. You roll your eyes skyward. Very funny. You slip it into your pouch anyway. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking Age charms weren't for protection or luck. Some were just jokes, tiny carved animals, silly faces, even little rude gestures tucked into homes and shrines to keep the spirits entertained. Because even the otherworldly appreciate a bit of mischief. You head home slowly. The path feels easier today. Lighter. Back at the longhouse, things are buzzing. Your daughter-in-law is trying to organize baskets of seeds. Your grandson is insisting that his worm farm is part of the planting strategy. Your eldest is muttering about rain clouds that look too symmetrical to be innocent. You give everyone tasks. Chop this. Soak that. Stir this until it threatens you with curses. Then, you settle in by the fire and pull out the runestone, the one with the unknown marking. You still haven't figured it out. You've shown it to the elders. They squinted, muttered, said things like it's probably just a smudge. But your gut disagrees. Tonight, you trace it with a finger, eyes half closed. And suddenly, you see it. It's not a rune. It's a map. Not to a place. To a moment. A star pattern. The kind you only see once a year, right before midsummer. A brief constellation. Fleeting. You whisper, he'll return. Not to stay, but to pass through. Historians still argue whether Viking society believed in reincarnation, visitation, or the idea of spirits cycling through the seasons. The sagas hint. The poems suggest. But nothing is ever certain. And maybe that's the point. You tell no one about the map. Not yet. Instead, you keep preparing. There's dye to make, clothes to mend, old wheat to sort, and one very annoying goat to keep out of the vegetable patch. Life keeps spinning, stubborn and glorious. And you let it. That night, as you sit by the fire with your tea and your bones reminding you that yes, you are absolutely not 20 anymore, you feel something shift in the air. Not spooky. Not ominous. Just presence. And you say, without turning your head, I hope you're watching. I hope you're proud. There's no reply. But the fire flickers. Just once. You smile. Then turn in for the night. You sleep deeply. And dream of moss, wind, and laughter that isn't quite your own. You wake to the smell of rain. Not the heavy, spring drowns everything kind. The good kind. The kind that softens the ground and makes the air smell like green. You stretch, slowly, bones creaking like old oars, and roll out of bed already listing the day's tasks in your head like a general preparing for battle. Spoiler, your main opponent is cabbage. The planting has gone well. The children have learned how to press their thumbs into the soil and drop seeds with just enough reverence. The men have fixed the fence 3 times, which is impressive considering the goat has dismantled it 4. The longhouse roof only leaks in one spot now, and you're almost fond of the drip. It's like a stubborn uncle who always shows up late but brings gossip. Today is cleaning day. Again. Because Viking life isn't all sword fights and sagas, it's mostly chores and pretending your back doesn't hurt. You assign your daughter-in-law to scrub the benches with pine ash, your grandson to sweep the ash pit. You did tell him there might be treasure, so that one's on you, and your eldest to finally clear out the cellar of mystery cheese. You, of course, handle the herb wall. You always handle the herb wall. Mainstream historical fact, Viking women were the household's memory keepers. Recipes, remedies, lineages, birth stories, death tales. If it wasn't in your head, it was lost. So you keep the herbs sorted. You keep the fire burning. You keep the stories told, sometimes even before they happen. You're sorting chamomile and yarrow when you hear it. Music. Just a hum. Not loud. Not even real, maybe. But it's there, hovering in the corner of your hearing like a memory that's not yours. You pause. The others haven't heard it. They keep working. The goat chooses that exact moment to sneeze explosively and knock over a bucket. Your grandson screams like the world's ending. You pretend to care, but your ears are still searching the air. Later that afternoon, you find the fourth carving. It's not where you expect it to be. It's inside your work apron, tucked into the pocket. A tiny sleeping figure. Curled. Peaceful. And for the first time, you feel it, not sadness. Not longing. Closure. He's not coming back. Not physically. Not like before. But the line's not cut. It's just woven into something else now. You hold the carving in your hand a long time. Then place it gently in the wooden bowl by your bed, the one with the other 3 carvings. For now. 4 seasons. 4 lessons. 4 gifts. Quirky tidbit. Some fringe Viking tales speak of skyborn kin, souls that pass through a household to deposit wisdom, protection, or warning. Not ancestors. Not gods. Something in between. You don't honor them with fire or food. You honor them by listening. And you have. The village prepares for the first true festival of the year, the spring feast. There's barley bread, fish stew, dried apples rehydrated and cooked until they almost don't resemble sadness. There's music, badly played. Jokes, poorly told. Dancing, definitely dangerous after the 3rd cup of mead. You don't dance. But you sit by the fire and let the warmth paint your cheeks. You watch your grandchildren chase sparks. You smile when someone starts the story of the boy who floated in with the snow and your eldest shoots you a quick glance like, "Can I?" You nod. Let it be told. Let it live. Historians still argue whether Viking storytelling was entirely oral, or if some sagas were passed through other means, song, symbol, carving. But in this house, you know memory isn't just spoken. It's felt. In meals. In laughter. In the way someone scrapes honey from the bottom of the pot, just so. That night, the festival ends slowly, like a fire burning down. People drift home, full and warm and maybe a little too loud. You walk the longhouse one last time, checking locks, rearranging boots, sighing at the goat, who has somehow wedged himself onto the rafters again. You give him a withering look. I hope you get visited next winter. He blinks slowly, unfazed. You crawl into bed, bones humming, and glance at the bowl beside you. The carvings are still there. Except, now there are 5. You pause. The new one is different. Not a creature. Not a person. It's a longhouse. Yours. Perfectly carved, down to the curve of the roof and the smoke hole. You turn it over and find a symbol on the bottom, the same unknown rune from the stone. Etched in bone this time. Tiny, but clear. You hold it tight. You don't cry, but something settles in your chest. Like a final knot being tied. Like a thread woven into the next row of the story. The fire flickers. The goat snores. And somewhere, you swear you hear waves. Just once. Then, silence. The sky is different now. Not just in color or warmth, but in the way it feels like it's closer. More familiar. As if the whole world has exhaled, and in that breath, something old has loosened its grip. You step outside with a pail of water and find the morning sun tangled in dew, every blade of grass glistening like it's been blessed. The goat sneezes behind you. Back to normal, then. You refill the water trough and check the herb beds. The mint has exploded again. The thyme's holding its own. The sage, of course, is being dramatic and refusing to grow unless sung to. You hum anyway. Can't hurt. Inside the longhouse, life continues its steady churn. Bread rises. Boots dry by the door. Children argue over whose turn it is to stir the stew. You let them fight it out. Builds character. Today, though, your hands are restless. Not in the anxious way they were during winter, but in that itchy, let's make something useful way. So you start a new project. A tapestry. You haven't done one in years, not since your husband passed, and the world got too loud for the quiet work of threading stories into wool. But now, with summer approaching and the children growing fast and the shadows less hungry than before, it feels right. You lay out your materials. Wool dyed from onion skins, elderberries, lichen, soot. Soft, uneven, perfect. Your fingers know what to do even before your mind catches up. The needle moves. The threads follow. Mainstream historical fact: tapestry making in Viking society wasn't just decorative, it was narrative. Wall hangings told family history, battles, dreams, omens. Some were kept for generations. Others were burned as offerings. Every stitch meant something. Yours begins with the sea. Not just waves, but deep greens and smoky blues. You stitch in foam that curls like whispers, ships without sails, eyes peering from the depths. Then, snow, sharp white flecks tangled with silver thread, falling over a longhouse shaped like yours. In the corner, you stitch a figure, small, cloaked, holding a boat. The boy. You don't name him. You don't need to. Quirky tidbit: some Norse households believed certain tapestries held spiritual memory. That if woven during or after a great event, they could carry the emotion, the warning, the truth, passed from wall to wall, room to room, even to unborn kin. You finish stitching the boat. The figure places it gently in water, then vanishes into the grove behind him. It's not sad. It's right. By evening, you've hung the tapestry above the hearth. The children admire it, pointing to the waves and trees. Your daughter-in-law raises an eyebrow. That new? You nod. She doesn't press. Smart woman. Historians still argue whether women were the sole keepers of domestic law, or if men played a larger role than the sagas suggest. But sagas are loud. Homes are quiet. And you've always believed the truth lives in quiet places. That night, the wind shifts again. Only a little. Enough to stir the edge of your tapestry. You watch it dance in the firelight. And then you feel it. Not a presence. Not exactly. But something gentle. Familiar. Like a goodbye that doesn't hurt. You speak softly. Be well. No answer. None needed. You rise, check the door, pat the goat on the head, he grumbles, and return to your bed. As you lie down, you look one last time at the carved gifts in your bowl. 5 of them now. No more. Just enough. The longhouse creaks in the old, tired way it always has. The hearth murmurs. And outside, the stars lean in, quiet and full of memory. You pull the blanket up to your chin and let yourself drift, not away, but deeper. Into sleep. Into story. Into the knowing that you've done what needed doing. You were the witness. You were the guide. You were the one who stayed. And that, as always, is more than enough. The night stretches longer now, like the story itself has curled up beside you, content to rest. The longhouse fades into quiet. The fire has softened into a faint, pulsing glow, like a heartbeat you no longer have to think about. Outside, the wind brushes gently through pine needles and moss, carrying no warnings this time. Just air. Just breath. You don't move. You don't need to. All that needed to be done is done. The boy is gone, but not lost. The snow has melted, but it remembers where it's been. And you, still wrapped in wool and memory, can finally sleep without waiting. No danger. No tasks. No stories begging to be told. Only stillness. Only peace. So let your shoulders fall. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts wander, untethered, like feathers drifting over old fjords. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing needs your hands right now. The goat, the children, the hearth, they're all safe. And you are still here. A little older. A little wiser. And very, very ready to rest. So breathe. And again. And let the quiet take you, like snow falling on pine, soft and slow and whole.